Well, looks like we are now live. All right. All right. Are we all good to start the meeting now? All right. Well, welcome everybody to the meeting. I'll bang the official gavel there. Very important part. So we'll start with the statement of acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge that the land we meet on today is the traditional lands for the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Greater Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. Roll call, we have apologies from Councillor Goldstone and Councillor Shanks. Motions to grant leave of absence. I did get an email from Kelvin wanting a leave of absence from the 11th to 20th of May. If someone is happy to move that. Do we have a seconder? All in favour? Carried unanimously. Any other leave of absence? If not, no non-attendance. And public open forum. I don't believe we have any public open forum. Yes. The next up is declarations of interest, Councillor Kosh.
Yeah, I'd like to declare two. It is 7.5 and 7.4. 7.4 is the Gawler Business Development Group funding agreement, and 7.5 is the Gawler activation budget. And both of those are around my advocacy for an artisans market in Gawler. So I'll be leaving the meeting on those two items. Thank you.
All right. Do we have any other declarations of interest? If not, confirmation of the minutes of the March meeting. Mayor's happy to move. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Hughes. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Do we have any business arising from the minutes? If not, we'll go straight into 7.1 Housing and Homelessness Update, and we're going to get a brief presentation from Dr. Alice Clark, who's here with us via Zoom. Are you able to hear us?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Great. Well, you can go ahead.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. I'm Alice. I'm the Executive Director of Shelter SA. We're the peak body for housing in South Australia. So we have been around since 1977, an incorporated association. So we are a member organisation. Our members are mainly most of the major charities that you would have heard of that operate across the state of South Australia, that provide human services and homelessness services to vulnerable South Australians. And we're very pleased to say that now the town of Gawler is also one of our member organisations, and we welcome that membership. Unfortunately, we don't have any housing ourselves, but we work with a lot of organisations that do. And we are in the middle of a huge housing emergency, as many of you will be aware, especially outside of Adelaide and the metropolitan area. across the state, it's a very, very dire situation for people who need a home. We undertake policy and legislative work that look at the housing system rather than individual advocacy, and we don't have any clients. If you want to know more about Shelter SA, please feel free to check out our website. There's lots of information on there that I hope you find useful. So we've been working with the town of Gawler to develop a housing action plan. And I think this is quite a unique piece of work that's happened in South Australia, where we've clearly separated out the parts of housing that state government is responsible for and the parts that the community can take responsibility for and take action on. And we've had some interactions with senior public servants who are relevant to housing, and we're also talking with the new government and relevant ministers about housing, the use of land and other relevant issues in Gawler. So that's exciting as well. We had a fantastic workshop where we brought a great group of people together to help us look for solutions to the housing issues in Gawler. And I think our role was really around making sure the right people were part of that conversation, to meet the town of Gawler people and work on this problem together. We're very keen on encouraging partnerships and collaboration to produce the sort of housing we need. We've also spoken to the local government association, who are very interested in this work, and there's been high levels of interest from other councils, particularly in the regions as well. So I hope that makes sense. I was only asked to speak for a few minutes, but I'm very happy to listen to any feedback or comments or take any questions that people might have. And thank you for having me.
Do we have any questions? So I guess I'll ask a question. Are there many councils in South Australia that are currently members of Shelter SA?
There are only two, so Town of Gawler and the City of Adelaide. But we're working on that.
Great. And you got a question, Councillor Kosh?
Yep, thank you. Just reading the attachments that talked about the model pilot project, I thought that was quite interesting. Has that been implemented, or how close is that to being implemented as a real a real outcome?
So that you just cut out briefly there. Can you just repeat that for me?
Yes, I was interested in the model pilot project that you workshopped, and how close that to becoming a reality.
Thank you. Yes, I heard you that time. So what we were modelling was a financial model to build housing in Gawler, and what we did was use an actual piece of land to do that modelling on. However, that piece of land is not secured in any way to continue with that project. We needed a real site to be able to model properly so that we knew the size of the site, the zoning of the site and its location. So unfortunately, it's still a concept at this time, but I'm working with both Henry and Karen on how we can realise and progress the model that we've come up with.
Do we have any other questions? If not, Mayor?
Thank you, Alice. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation and speak, if that's okay.
Yep, go ahead.
So we've been doing a lot of work with Shelter SA. The strength of Shelter SA, being a partner and being a member, is that we can use the expertise of Dr. Alice Clark and all the other members that are part of Shelter SA, but also the expertise of Alice across South Australia and even nationally. To that end, we had the workshop with key stakeholders, and the people in the room were really keen to contribute to reducing what is quite a disgrace as far as the lack of affordable housing in South Australia, but also nationally. And so we came up with this concept, and we have people seriously interested in solving this problem. And that includes builders, that includes bureaucrats, not-for-profits, developers. Everyone was around the table, and also community groups. So, for example, Fleetwood Building Company, Fleetwood, I think that's what they're called, Alice, Fleetwood, they build affordable homes. Their national executive made it very, very clear that they want to continue to have these conversations. They want to be involved in a solution. Port Pirie Council are interested. They're crying out for worker accommodation, and across our region, the Barossa Light Gawler region, there's not enough worker accommodation. They can't get workers because they can't find anywhere to live in the region. And so we have businesses right across the region that can't get workers purely because they've got nowhere to live. So there is a real opportunity. So we had RDA Barossa involved as well, and they're really keen on worker accommodation. So there's a whole range of benefits that the region can receive if we deliver on this type of model. But we need to continue to have discussions with landholders, and I think we can actually deliver quite an interesting and as Alice said, it's quite innovative because people are now wanting to solve this problem. There has to be a way. Interestingly, we had some bureaucrats who weren't particularly interested in solving. They just said, no, it can't be done. So we were interested in people who could, who could actually think outside the square. And interestingly, it wasn't government, it was private industry that actually were able to think that way. And I think it'll be a private industry solution, which is fantastic because one of the remits of that workshop was we assume you're not going to get any government funding. What's the solution if you don't get government funding? Now, it is a government responsibility, yes, but they've failed over many years in this space. So the private industry, I think, will probably provide a solution. So there is some really exciting conversations. We've got people seriously wanting to be involved. And it could be applied across different regional communities as well. So as I said, Port Pirie are quite interested in this particular model. So we'll continue the conversations. I support this motion. I hope you support it too. And we'll continue to advocate and hopefully provide an innovative solution. Thank you.
All right, do we have a seconder? Councillor Little, did you wish to speak? Yeah, I'll just say that, I think this is a great thing for a very important cause. Housing is something that there's been reports recently about the affordability of renting as well, or the unaffordability of renting, I should say. And it's all just housing in general at the moment is at a very bad place for anyone who is not wealthy. And yeah, homelessness is something that I think a lot of the time when you hear people talk about solving the homelessness crisis, what they mean is solving the crisis of people seeing homeless people. And they say, oh, that's driving down my, my property prices or whatever. But, actual solving homelessness involves making homes, and we have to do that. So, Councillor Kosh.
Yeah, look, I'm quite happy to support this. When I look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and wants, housing is right up the top there. You need that for a secure and prosperous life. So I'm very happy to support this. Thank you.
Any other discussion? If not, I'm happy to move the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Oh yeah, and thanks to Alice for your presentation. It's all been passed, so yeah, you can. Well, you can hang around if you want, but you're free to go.
I will go. Thank you so much for having me and for being enthusiastic about the work we're doing. And it's very exciting, and we look forward to another update soon. So thank you and good night. Good luck for the rest of your meeting.
Yeah. All right, that moves us to 7.2, Gawler Aging Well Framework Update. My understanding is the presenter is in isolation from COVID, and that our very own Bryce Norton is here to give a presentation instead.
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, unfortunately, Elise is unwell with COVID at the moment, and so unable to be here tonight. So I'll sub in and provide a little bit of introductory context as to this report and the initiative that we've been undertaking with COTA and the plug-in, which is the social enterprise arm of COTA SA. So we've worked with them to develop this draft Aging Well framework, looking to establish a range of principles and practices to inform the relevant and timely responsive action of council. And I guess it's good to put into context in regards to that this framework is complementary yet somewhat separate to the direct service delivery that the Home Assist and the Community Support Program does. This is around council as an entire organisation and a collective response to ageing well across the community and ageing in a friendly community. So in regards to what we've done here, we've gone through a process of looking at previous documentation and literature around this, but also started to have some initial community consultation processes have occurred both externally and internally. So we've spoken with members of the community within this demographic. We've also spoken internally to staff and the invitation to elected members. And this draft framework that we're presenting today is really an initial response to that early consultation. So as you can see through the documentation and the attachments, that we've worked utilising the World Health Organization age-friendly environments model to look at the three environments of physical environment, social environment and civic services to base the framework on. It's very much looking in terms of council being, and as this has been sort of put forward and strategized within our other community plan and other documents as well, that council isn't a service provider in every sense and in every instance. So looking at council does have the areas and the roles of advocator, regulator, facilitator, leader, as well as service provider. So looking in terms of what areas of this initiative we can add value to in all 5 of those areas. So from here, we've got the draft framework that's presented for members tonight. We're looking to consult with the community in regards to this draft document here, and in particular look to review and refine some of the strategic actions that are presented within this report. That's in particularly through a community forum we'll be looking to hold at the Sport and Community Centre next month, but also some other targeted community consultation that we'll be holding around Gawler. But also very much welcome any feedback from members to provide written feedback or commentary, or also to put the invitation out now to meet with staff and the consultants to work through this document and provide further refinement and feedback to these draft strategic actions. Once we've done all of those sorts of things there, we'll be looking to bring the final document back to the July CCS meeting again for elected members and committee members here.
Right. Any questions for our guest speaker? If not, is someone happy for us to move the motion? Councillor Little, do you wish to speak? Do we have a seconder? Councillor Sample, do you wish to speak? Yeah. Do we have any other speakers? If not, I will move the motion. All those in favour? Oh, sorry, hold on. You need, just use your microphone, councillor Hughes, when I'm not seeing you.
Oh, okay, thanks. Thanks,
Yeah.
Cody. One of the things that comes out really strongly in the plan is about access, transport and mobility, but it's something that comes up a lot in the Gawler Health Service with the Gawler area sort of health plans and things like that is access to health and access to health by elderly people that have access issues. So sort of see it in the plan, but I think it's really important that that whole access issue. I mean, it talks about transport and mobility in the plan, but also making sure about access to health and those services. I think it's there. It's just and this plan's going up for consultation, but it will be something I think that probably that consultation will probably bring back as well. But yeah, happy to support the motion.
Any other discussion, councillor Sample?
Thank you, Chair. I agree with what Deputy Mayor David has said. One of the things I noticed in the report is we've still got buses, fantastic drivers running around the town. They're really lonely because nobody's using the buses. I just wonder if in the report and where it moves from here, that it can be made a little bit easier for the elderly person to know that they can pick up and be picked up and taken anywhere in the town. I went for a ride the other day around where the bus route is, and it's absolutely amazing where it goes. But on top of that, the bus driver indicated to me that if there was a person that wasn't going to get off at that bus stop, but they lived a little bit further up the road, that they have the ability to do that. And now with the floors and things that lower down and so forth, I'd just like to see that maybe, as David said, the communication is so important because Gawler's certainly spread out, and especially around the villages where a lot of people now are living. Transport's so important for as people are ageing and want to go from A to B.
Councillor Little, were you putting your hand up before? No. Okay. Any other discussion? In that case, I will move the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. And thanks to our guest speaker, you can't go home. Yeah, so our next guest speaker for 7.3, our community garden update, is Ms. Debbie Nelson from the community garden. You can just press the button on the microphone there.
Thank you. Good evening. We're here once again, as we were asked by council staff to give another presentation to you on our progress. As you are already aware, since July 2020, we have worked closely with council staff. As a committee, we have worked extremely hard since then and have gone through all steps required of us by council. The Gawler Community Garden became incorporated on the 30th of March 22 and now are fully compliant with the Town of Gawler Community Gardens policy. We have our common sill, public liability and volunteer workers cover insurance, and an ABN, tax file number, bank account and growing Friends of the Garden membership. We have recently put in a written submission for the draft budget as suggested by council staff when they informed us that the previous budget bid for the community gardens establishment in the council budget had fallen below the line. In this submission, the committee has emphasised the importance of establishing the community garden and how it will contribute towards the council's community plan, excuse me, 2030 plus. We have also submitted a participatory budgeting nomination for funds to establish the perimeter fencing and look forward to the outcome of the community voice. The committee continues to keep looking for funding with grant opportunities and more, and will keep doing so into the future. We look forward to the next step, which is the drafting of a lease agreement. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you once again. Thank you.
Thank you. Did we have any questions? Councillor Koch?
I'm not sure whether I direct them to Debbie or Bryce.
Oh, ask your question.
Okay, I'm looking on page, what is it, 17 of 86, and stage 1. It's got a total of $50,000 there, and the majority of that is the fence. Is that new fence constructed, or is that just materials?
And sorry, could you just press it again?
Working?
Yep.
Okay. When we looked at this, we've got a couple of different quotes for the fencing, but the fencing seemed to be anywhere between 20 and 40, depending on who you're dealing with at the time, and also depending on the varying heights. Obviously want to try and work with whatever other regulations, but we definitely need a secure fence. So it really depends on how much council obviously are also willing to give us, and we'll work around that, so that we can have the best security fencing that we can out there, because it is so important for it.
Thank you. Councillor Fraser, did you have a follow-up? Yeah.
The power and the water, talks about connections to power and the water. Can you just explain what that's for? I mean, the reason why I ask is, I mean, I've set up 2 community gardens before, and that's what I've done, and I understand about water and power, and I'm just wondering what your understanding of the power and water requirements of a community garden is.
There are no meters there on site, so we weren't able to get anything specific, because we were under the understanding at the time that council were going to be contributing to getting the power and water put on. So we weren't able to get anything. When I contacted SA Water, they said whoever owns the land is responsible for that, and not whoever is leasing. And as there's nothing there, we weren't able to get any kind of quote.
I suppose, what's the need for power?
Apologies. We would like, as we'll be holding workshops, it is one of the things there will be a part of that. The shed area, the main shed, will be our main area for the workshops. We also want to have an office there and a kitchen within, so that we can do produce. The produce that we have, we can teach people in the workshops how to run, how it will work for them once they have their produce going, and at home they can take that information home, obviously. But also the change, one of the smaller sheds will also be used as a change room, and there will be like facilities there for people who change babies, or if they're out of hours and they want to change their clothes, that sort of thing, people with little children. It's pretty important to have that there, obviously.
Yeah, and Yep.
I mean, the reason why I ask is because that comes in later, at one of the later stages. I'm just wondering why you desperately need the power on and that cost when you really, really want to put plants in the ground now and get on with stage one, which is basically the fence and preparing the soil and putting your plants in, where that's a stumbling block where, for example, you know, you can run all your solenoids using small batteries, for example, so you don't need mains power to run your irrigation. And that could come down later as in later stages. I'm just wondering, that seems like to be a stumbling block to actually get going, because it sounds like you want to get going, but you've got these big items which potentially could come down later. You could just plan in where the trench would go and stuff and just not put something there. For example, you know, that's, yeah. $50,000 when potentially you don't need to spend that much money to actually get going. You know, just need a fence and to start. That's, yeah, it's my.
All right. Did you have a response, or are you happy to just take that as commentary? Yeah.
The fence, obviously, as I said, is definitely dead set needs to happen. And as you said, planting can happen after that. We can do that as needed. All of these, majority of these things aren't as needed, but we do need, for obvious reasons, we need particularly the water. We can manage without, but while we have those trenches open at a later date, which is what we've written there, for the electricity, all those sort of things, will be a later date. But initially, it's more to get the power and the water put on the actual meter themselves and the fencing. They were our top priorities, and then the planting afterwards. Yeah, while the trenching is being done. It just works out a lot better. The tradesman we've spoken to said it's just makes more sense to do it that way. Otherwise, it's going to cost us even more money down the track if this is done at the same time.
All right. Councillor Fraser.
Hi, you didn't really answer Councillor Kosh's question about the fence on whether that's installed. That's the cost for it to be installed. Okay, so have you had any discussions with the service clubs so that you might, you know, you never know, they might be able to install it for you. I'm not saying they can, but it's worth the conversation to save you some money. And also, once the fence is up, are you going to start your garden straight away? Okay, because that's why you need the water. I was just thinking that if you haven't got the money to start straight away, well, then you don't, because once you put the water on, obviously you're paying for the meter, whether you're using the water or not. So, and yeah, and the power, if you can just run I don't know if that's possible, I don't know anything about it, but if you can run it in the trenches, but not actually have it connected until you need it, is that the idea? Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kosh.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, will the community group have their own meter, water meter and power meter, or will they simply be a tenant and then be charged for the amount? For example, you can put a slave meter in and a non-return valve in, which would get you started as compared to putting a whole meter on.
Is there a staff member that? Oh, I guess speaker's back.
Through the chair, yes, there is definitely the opportunity. It would need to be investigated if a slave meter could be put in there, in particular for a water situation there. And that would be determined in consultation with the property and all those sorts of things. But how that would work with the existing community centre there, particularly from a water perspective, and then also investigating the power at a later date if required, but looking at those things and how they could be done, yeah, for sure.
Right. So are there any other questions before we move to the motion? If not, is someone happy to move the motion? Mayor, do you wish to speak?
Just briefly, thank you, Debbie, for coming along once again. We're getting there. It is a slow process, but I look forward to seeing a community garden there. I think the questions have been really important ones, and I think I'm hearing that you can do this in stages, and you know, if you get whatever, I don't even know what a slave meter is, but whatever it is, sounds like a good idea. And you know, batteries for solenoid valves, and there's all sorts of people that might be able to give you advice. I think the question around service clubs was a really good one. So there's service clubs that are keen to support community gardens, so it is worth reaching out to people like Rotary and Lions, the 2 Rotary clubs, Apex, etc., to see what they might be able to offer. You might even consider presenting at one of those meetings, and you may have already done that. But yes, it just keep connected with them, because you know sometimes they forget about people because they've got other pressing priorities. So yeah, look, I support this, and let's see where it goes. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Kosh.
Yeah, I'd second it. The only thing I would say is there's ways around doing these things to get moving, and there's probably some cost savings in there if it's just arranged a different way. Like putting a slave meter in basically just counts the kilolitres it goes through, and you need a backflow prevention device so you don't get backflow back into the mains, which you have to have. And from there, you just put high density poly through to low density, and you can use battery powered solenoids. Really easy, simple stuff, and could quickly happen for not too much money. So I think maybe if you could look at some of the different options, because the big picture there is like $263,000. That's at the end of the rainbow. But I think you really need just by starting with some of those other ways of doing things would actually put some runs on the board, and you'd actually start planting and building up the community. So I'm quite happy to support this. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So, and just clarifying with the mover, you're happy with this? It does say notes, but I guess number 4 there is an option one way or the other. Are you happy with this version of the motion? Yeah. All right. Discussion, Councillor Fraser.
Yes, I'm happy to support this motion. I think it's very important that they get a lease. If you're going for grants, if you've got some sign of tenure, length of tenure, it'll be a lot easier for you to get grants. So I think that's a very important step, but it also sounds like you need to have a conversation with Councillor Kosh.
Is there any other discussion on this item? Yeah, look, I'll just say that I think this is, getting the lease agreement going will be good. Obviously, there's lots of stuff that you can look at in terms of the actual cost estimates. I think the service clubs and that are a good idea to talk to. But that's just something to continue looking into. And once you have a lease agreement, I think a few things will be easier. So if there's no other discussion, I'm happy to move the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. So next up is 7.4, Gawler Business Development Group Funding Agreement. All right, put your microphone on.
I'd like to declare a perceived conflict of interest because around my advocacy around an artisan's market in Gawler, and yep, it's to do with that. So I'm happy, and I'll leave the meeting.
Okay.
And I'll go out and I'll have a chat to them about community gardens.
All right. Just to note that we are We are just at quorum now, so if you need to go to the bathroom, wait until councillor Kosh is back. So do we have a mover for this? Councillor Little, do you wish to speak? Do we have a seconder? Councillor Fraser, do you wish to speak?
I'd just like to say that actually I think the Gawler Business Development have really, stepped up, and so I'm happy for this to happen. Yeah.
Great. Do we have any other speakers? If not, we can move the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Bring councillor Kosh back in so that he can declare a conflict again. You're a conflict? All right, we'll discuss that with regards to quorum and when we get to it. All right, so we move on to 7.5 goal activation budget. Do we have any conflicts? Oh, councillor Kosh. Microphone on.
I'd like to declare a perceived conflict around because of my advocacy for an artisans market. And potentially this could go at Walker Place. So I'm therefore declaring a perceived conflict of interest and leaving the meeting.
All right, hang on for now because we have a second conflict. So just going to make sure what's happening with the quorum issue. Councillor Little.
Perceived conflict as well regarding the Anzac Day. Since I'm the Vice President of the RSL, I was going to stay in, but I had a quick look through my phone. I think I'd better not. So I've got to proceed plain. I will be leaving the meeting as well.
All right, well, we don't have quorum. So CEO, can you advise us on what the next step is? Or can the Mayor would like to suggest something?
With Anzac Day, I'm having a meeting with the President this week, I think. I think it's this week or maybe it's next week, and Thursday. And I'm just wondering if we pull that out because I think something will come out of that, in particular around audio. And I wonder whether we need to park Anzac Day for the moment because there might be, I think the RSL are going to ask for support for audio, and I think that needs to come back to council for discussion, clearly. So I don't know if that's amenable to the committee chair, but I think it's probably wise rather than authorising now and then adding. I just think it should be a complete conversation.
Either leaving it out or moving it separately, both would result in being able to continue having the meeting. But I don't know if you're happy to move a version without the Anzac Day, you're welcome to.
Yeah, and I just think that there's going to be some developments out of that meeting that needs to come to council for discussion. So
all right,
that might be useful to just park Anzac Day.
all right, well,
and that's not to say that we don't want that. It's just I think it's better process than approving something and then potentially having to change it. Yeah.
Well, if you are going to move that, then Councillor Kosh.
Yeah, well, if you remove that, I get where the Mayor's coming from because I know what the discussions may be. So if that's removed, well, that stops my perceived conflict. So
All right.
I can stay in the chamber.
All right, Councillor Kosh can head out, and we will have a version of the motion up without the Anzac Day.
Move a separate motion regarding Anzac Day. We could swap and you go out and I could move a separate motion at motions without notice if you like.
Yep,
Yes.
but we'll sort out this motion first. Do we have a mover for this motion? No, do you have a question, Councillor Sample?
If I may, after the discussions we've had earlier tonight, should not B be excluded from this motion tonight?
Let me see what B is.
at this point in time.
Yeah, that's correct.
So I suggest that we move that and E, B and E at this point in time.
All right, we'll just remove those ones and get the total budget correct on the agenda there.
Chair, I'm happy to move as councillor Samble suggests, removing B and E.
Yep.
And we can deal with that at a later date. I can sort the Anzac Day out in a motion on notice, a motion without notice if you like.
Yep.
Or straight after this if you like.
I'm just sorting out what the actual numbers are here on the screen. All right. All right. So, are you moving that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the discussion. I think this is a really important aspect of what is effectively now council business. Activation budget, I think it's good to have a name to it, and it's good to understand how much support council provides community events and community groups. I think it's really transparent, and it helps us as elected members understand our commitment as well, and particularly if we're explaining to people, you know, how much do we provide to NAIDOC Week, how much do we provide Christmas carols, etc., etc. And I think it really does show the value of local government as well, and just how important it is now that local government supports community events. Because I think without these contributions, these events wouldn't happen. So I also like to congratulate staff for being involved in all of these events, because it is quite a commitment. But I think our community wins as a result of the contribution of council and council staff. So thank you. And I hope people support this motion.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Little? Yep, we're good. Do we have any other discussion? Councillor Fraser?
The Christmas carols, are we going to go back to the carols this year? I tried to grab it out of the report and I couldn't really get it. So we're going to do away with Santa's workshop? And
Do we have David Barrett?
Through the chair, the intention is to go back to the Christmas carols at Pioneer Park, but council staff are looking at ways to fund the Santa's workshop in existing recurrent budget. So we're deliberating that at the moment because we see the real value in that program for the town. So it would be both Santa's workshop and the carols at separate times, or possibly even the same weekend if Apex are flipping their weekends, which we're considering at the moment. So all of it together in a nutshell.
And is that not reflected in the activation budget here? But
through the chair, no, because the Santa's workshop would come out of a separate budget, potentially the Civic Centre operations, or failing that, it may well be in some of the residual activation. We need to work that through as we go through the budget process. Yep.
Councillor Fraser.
I'm pleased to see that you're still thinking about Santa's workshop, because it's been really terrific, and the young ones, you know, Christmas is for the little ones, and I think that's really good. I was just wondering if we could have a word with the Apex Club with their Christmas carols, and maybe some of their guest artists could become local, and then they wouldn't need so much money either. You know, when we do the Fringe with the Walker Place and we get the locals, they're absolutely fantastic, and it sort of, you know, would save heaps of money.
Councillor Sample.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, look, the Oz cycle, the O event, you know what I think about push bikes, because I can't see any, and that sort of thing. But all of a sudden, this has come in, and you know, like, is this going to be catered as an event of Gawler Council, or is it just a community event and all of a sudden they want some money to do things, as it says here, 4,500, 2,000 in kind and so forth. You know, I just wonder how these things get in, and then it comes to us to approve them. And, you know, the Ageing Disability Expo gets 2,500 and they get 4,500. I think we've got a lot of other things that we may be able to do for our ageing persons in the town, whether it be free bus tours with the mayor giving a guided tour around the town and things like that. But, you know, like here we go now again. We haven't got a completed bus cycle way. We're talking about running people when we do get a push bike to run them through the car park of, you know, the area. I just object to these things just sliding in and spending $4.5 grand.
Is any commentary from staff on that? CEO?
Through the chair, that particular initiative, the initiative hasn't just slid in. It's sort of been a couple of years in the making. There've been reports to council when the initial concept was proposed. Council endorsed that proposal. I think we've now had it 2 years. This is effectively the 3rd year. So, you know, there's no slipping into the agenda and the budget. There has been a process where that initiative has been presented to council.
Air was not involved with them and things like that. It's not possible. If new events are going to come to the town, then I believe this did slip in. I'm sorry, but it's a waste of money.
So do we have any other discussion on this? You happy to close the motion? Oh, sorry, is David Hughes? Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that, yeah, we have had reports to council about the cycling event, and you know, it has been a successful event, and you know, it sort of has flowed in well. So yeah, no, I sort of agree with the CEO that it hasn't slid in, the cycling side of it. And the whole idea with the activation budget is to actually have a lot of these smaller events that staff support. Staff time is not cheap, so it does come to a few $1,000s, and I think it's important that we actually have been keeping track of the in-kind support from staff. So yeah, no, I'm happy to support the motion, and I think it's really good tracking. And I like the idea of having local talent at the Christmas carols, because I agree that we've got a lot of really good singers that would give some of the highly paid people at the carols a real run for their money. So I think that's a good idea from Councillor Fraser on the carols too. So yeah, no, happy to support the motion.
Mayor?
For me to close the debate?
Yep.
So thank you everyone for the discussion. I completely agree about the Christmas carols. I think Councillor Samble has brought this up over and over many years, that local talent should be used. And so if that can be fed back to the organisers, I know that council is involved in the organisation. I think that my expectation is that we have more local talent, because there's not much in when you go. There's a little bit, but not a lot. And I completely agree, because the Santa's workshop has been an outstanding success, and you're absolutely right, Di. It is for little ones, and they just love it. They just love it. And I think the men's shed get a lot out of it too. And it's been really good from a collaboration point of view. So I think it can be done a little bit cheaper, and I'm sure, David, you'll come up with a viable solution. There's some really good events here that we support. Youth Week, for example, I notice that's going up and up. That might need to be looked at as far as exploding from a budget point of view. And again, with youth skate park events, that's gone up considerably as well. So all those things need to be looked at, so that it just doesn't keep adding and adding. And again, even with the fringe event, as you said, Di, we've cut that back to try and contain costs, which is what you have to do. It's not a bottomless pit of money. So I think this is a really good way forward, and we can deal with the other two matters accordingly, hopefully with that other matter very soon. So yeah, I'll shut up and let you put the motion.
All right, all those in favour? Carried unanimously. You can bring Councillor Koch back in. You can just move it next if you want. Yeah, so next up, we're going to have a separate motion about the Anzac Day event. So Councillor Little, if you wanted to declare a conflict. All right. Yeah, as previously stated, Councillor Little is declaring his conflict and leaving the room. So Mayor, you had a motion?
I actually don't. I don't have a motion. We're meeting with the president of the RSL on Thursday to discuss a range of matters, including audio, but also about memorials. So I'm not sure, CEO, can you provide any advice on how we proceed with Anzac Day, a potential motion?
Yeah, what was the number that was in the?
It was $12,600, so that we defer the Anzac Day matter to a future meeting.
And a point to about looking into
subject to discussions with the RSL.
Yeah.
How about that? With the, hang on, the Gawler RSL sub-branch. I think that's its official name. We don't need to deal with the Gawler show right now, I don't think, but we do need to deal with this one, just so that we've got some direction. Gawler RSL sub-branch funding matter be deferred pending further discussions with the RSL president.
Right, we'll just make sure that we've got the motion. Discussions between who and the RSL president?
With the, yeah. Does that make sense, Cody?
Yeah, do we need to say the mayor's discussion, staff discussion, who's discussing with the RSL president?
Further discussions with the mayor, yes, and the RSL. The mayor, and I think the deputy mayor will be involved with those discussions as well. So the mayor, the deputy mayor, council staff, and the RSL president.
David Barrett, you had a comment?
Yeah, through the chair, it should be the Gawler Anzac Day event funding, not the Gawler RSL sub-branch funding. So we don't technically fund the sub-branch, we fund the Anzac Day event.
It might be better to put Gawler RSL sub-branch funding, including Anzac Day, because there's more than one matter. Funding, including Anzac Day. Including Anzac Day funding, yep. Yep. Thank you, David.
So that it's
sense?
a little bit of a jumbled at the moment. I think maybe the RSL sub-branch funding, including the Anzac Day event.
Event support.
Event support.
Is that better? That we call a.
So that the
No,
RSL sub-branch
that
funding.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
I can't I can't read it, recommends to council that the Gawler RSL
Sub-branch.
sub-branch
Funding including for the Anzac Day event.
including for the,
Anzac Day
get rid of
event.
support funding and matter
Yep. Be deferred.
pending discussions between the mayor, deputy mayor, staff, council staff,
And council staff.
council staff, and the and and the
Are you happy with this motion?
does that make sense?
Um,
With the, between them and with the, I think, and the RSL sub-branch president,
Okay, change with to and.
that last with, and the, does that read better? Councillor De Gawler, RSL sub-branch funding, including all the Anzac Day that be deferred pending discussions between and the, okay, I'm happy to.
All right.
Do you wish,
Yeah,
just
you speak-
briefly,
Speak to it.
So thank you for allowing us to just massage this motion so that it made sense. There are a number of matters that the RSL is wishing to discuss with council. It includes the World War I Memorial on Adelaide Road. It also includes the audio, the sound that was, I think everyone agrees, was not the best for Anzac Day. So further to those discussions, that will come back to council, and council will then be able to just discuss the matter in detail. And I think that's probably enough for now, because we haven't had those discussions yet. I hope that makes enough sense for people.
Do we have a seconder, Councillor Sample?
Yes, is this a Gawler RSL sub-branches event or the Gawler Council event? Or we just supply the finance?
It is run by the Gawler sub-branch, and we support it. A bit like the Christmas carols.
Yeah. And so were you seconding that as well? Yeah. Do we have any other discussion? If not, we can move the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. You can bring Councillor Little back in. All right, next up is 7.6, round 2 community grants. Councillor Fraser.
I'm happy to move this. I think it was really good that there was some left over and there was an opportunity for some extra people to get some money. It really is a great initiative of the council, I think, to do this for local communities. It just helps them a little bit along the way to do things that normally they'd be struggling with. So, yeah, fully support.
Do we have a seconder? Mayor, do you wish to speak? No. Do we have any other discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. This brings us to 7.7, heritage learning on existing infrastructure. The Mayor's happy to move. Wish to speak?
I think the report is a really good one. It explains the opportunities for heritage learning across the town, both in digital, electronic format, but also physical, because I think there's a role for both. Yeah, I think this is a reasonable way forward. Thank you.
And the seconder, Councillor Kosh. I don't want to speak. Councillor Hughes, did you wish to speak? No. Do you have any other discussion? Councillor Fraser?
I'd just like to make a comment. I think Brian Tom would be really pleased with this.
I had a question, Chair, that I'd asked last week about what's the, I guess, in terms of the next step forward, or like whether this goes into a plan or into the budget item or something. Did you have any commentary on that, David Barrett?
Through the chair, so the next steps for staff based on this resolution, assuming it is endorsed by council as well, is that we will start building a framework around how we are going to publish heritage learning, whether it be physical or digital, for existing infrastructure, and then bring that back to council as a framework around that that will then inform future budgets if needed. So there might be opportunities that we can absorb digital, for example, within existing budgets, and then physical signage may have to occur as a budget bid in future budget years, if that makes sense. So the next step is for us to put that framework together to identify which buildings get what and for what reasons, and bring that back to council.
Great. And should that be, I guess, put into the report, or is that?
So through the chair, we take that as point 2.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Councillor Sample?
Yeah, just wondering when the sign that's around opposite the post office, which is discussing the heritage of our town, those signs is going to be either pulled out or redone, please.
Are these the signs that, say that, Aboriginal history and all that are along the river? Because I think we've had attempts to replace those before that might have gone below the line on the budget. But David Barrett, do you have?
So through the chair, we've got some of the cultural heritage walk signage being replaced currently. We're just waiting for final development approvals because we had to relocate around Hope Chapel because it was actually in the Hope Chapel land, the original one, and also out the front of the Civic Centre here, just to ensure that a slight movement because of some infrastructure as opposed part of the redevelopment is endorsed by development. With respect to the Aboriginal language on some of those signs, we are aware that it's inappropriate. We've been working with staff to reword. We're designing that up at the moment to a final design of that sign, which will then be presented through to the Reconciliation Action Plan Working Group for its consideration and then endorsement, and then that'll be brought through. So that's all in process and will hopefully be done within the coming 6 months, for example.
Great. Anything else? If not, all those in favour? Carried unanimously. Brings us to 7.8 policy review for busking, mobile food vendors policy and safe environments policy. Do we have a mover or questions, or Councillor Kosh?
Yeah, just on the food van one, I read there that a food van near the aquatic centre could only run when the aquatic centre is closed. Is that right? Was that right? I think that's what I said. I just want to know whether that why we do that.
Is there someone from staff that can answer that?
Maybe you need to check whether I got it right or not.
Bryce, you're on the hot seat. Oh, try again.
Unfortunately, I can't provide a clear answer to that, so I'll have to take that one notice and get back to you, sorry.
All right. So do we have a mover? Councillor Little, you wish to speak? Do we have a seconder? If we don't, the motion can lapse. Councillor Kosh, do you wish to speak? All right. Do we have any discussion? If not, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. This brings us to information reports. Yes, Mayor?
I'd like to move them en bloc.
I'd like to move 8.1, the digital marketing strategy, 8.2, the community engagement update, and 8.3, the goal of fringe review on block. All right, do you wish to speak to it?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for these information reports. I think it gives us a good update on these three matters. Digital marketing, community engagement and Gawler Fringe review. The Gawler Fringe is getting more and more popular. More and more people are getting out and about in Gawler. It's good for business. It's good for the town. It's good for the whole town when people come from outside of Gawler to attend many different events right across the month. Community engagement is really important. I think there's always more we can do with community engagement, but I think that there's always an effort to really go above and beyond with community engagement. So sometimes we don't quite hit the mark, but sometimes I think we go and excel. So, and our digital marketing strategy is improving out of sight since we've put more resources in place. I think there's certainly been a lot more engagement across our socials, and so I congratulate staff for that. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Fraser, do you wish to speak?
I agree with everything the Mayor has said, but just a couple of questions on 8.2. The balustrade going over the Mill Street Bridge, the Mill Inn Bridge, when is that going in? Does anybody know?
Through the chair, I understand that procurement of the balustrading work has been undertaken. However, we're very concerned with the price that we'd received relative to the budget. It was double. So we're not quite going back to the drawing board, but we're sort of pausing, unfortunately.
Is the Conley Bridge, that's the one that takes you into Conley Park? Because I walked over that the other day. I went to the skate park for a little while, skate park event, and I hadn't realised that that's got metal plates on it. Is that what's being repaired? Is that so? What happened that needed to be done?
Through the chair, no, it's not actually the bridge that takes you from Murray Road into Conley Park and the skate park area there. It's the bridge that takes you, once you've walked through the ford and right into the back area of Conley Reserve at the back there. It's the old wooden bridge there. Yeah. I believe it was an age thing in regards to it's been there for a while.
I didn't mean that bridge, the other bridge with the metal plates on it.
Through the chair, unfortunately, no, I can't provide a comment on that one. I can find that out for you.
Councillor Kosh.
It's to do with the community consultation, page 65 of 86. It's electricity contract 2023. But why is that going out to consultation when we've already decided that's what we're going to do? Resolution, that's what we're going to do.
Through the chair, I can stand corrected and Linda might know, but my understanding is that it's not necessarily community consultation, but community information about the initiative, just in terms of awareness.
All right. Do we have any other commentary? Councillor Sample.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to move this, as Mayor Karen says, on bulk, but I always have a problem, especially on page 84, when you read there. I do not believe we are getting the publicity for what we do through our local paper. Now, I know people are going to say, well, use Facebook, use this or whatever. One day somebody can teach me, but I think I'm too old to learn. But, you know, when you see that on page 84, where free events, income, none, well, that's normal because they're free. Expenditure, 20,504. Ticketed events, 7,116. And expenditure was 12,810. And staffing in kind, 27,000, 60,000. 858. But it's good, you know, to us, that's a lot of money that we've spent, which are ratepayers' money, and it's gone. It's not getting better, it's going up every year and so forth. As long as we can get some really good, fresh, now that we've got Grady and them on board, to be able to get some really good media representation as to what we're doing in a positive way. And I don't believe we've been getting that. And in recent weeks and getting the bunyip, and that, I think since Grady's gone, it's dropped back and that sort of thing, because we don't seem to be getting that real clear PR that the Mayor and the Council of Gawler and the staff are doing a fantastic job. We don't seem to get that, but we're spending 60 grand, you know, and free events at 20. And, you know, like, I think all of this is a hell of a lot to consume for an old fart like me. And, but I'll certainly support putting it through as it, but I think we've just got to, like the Show Society, we've got to watch how we spend our money and not just keep increasing it each year. And it's free, free, free. I know how hard Sam is working to make this area here, but the centre, but when you look through the amount of money that gets spent and the amount of people that attend, you know, it's not really good. You know, we've got to be honest, don't we? You know, it's one of them things, but I'll support the motion involved.
Any other comments? I'll just say that in terms of the digital marketing strategy, I think our social media has been improving quite a lot. My main concern, as I've mentioned before, is I feel like our metrics don't necessarily reflect the ways in which it's improving so much as that we have an active page. You know, just saying that we've grown our page by 3% or something could, you know, on its own just could mean that there's been more dogs to be rescued, for example. But you know, I think our actual digital marketing strategy has been quite good, but yeah, I don't know how exactly to measure it. You know, maybe it's sort of similar to a customer response survey where we talk about, well, you know, what were people's experiences with, you know, interacting with the social media, how have they found it, and those kinds of things might be good to be able to reflect. Well, you know, people are getting better outcomes, people are feeling like they're being listened to. Those kinds of things are sort of a lot of the improvements we're making in our social media, but it's not necessarily reflected in just the direct how many followers we're gaining metrics. So yeah, just some commentary on that. Do we have any other discussion? If not, I'll move the motion. Oh, sorry, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. This brings us to 9 items listed for discussion. Do we have any items listed for discussion? If not, questions without notice. So I had a question around whether there was some, I guess, you know, talking to the state government we could do around our routes for buses and such. There's a couple of areas that I think we were just having the discussion about the community garden, for example. Do we have any buses that go end of the year? Yeah. And also Willis, yeah.
When the bus route went in, they were going to turn right and go down Hillier, but they couldn't turn around or something, so they couldn't do that. So the bus takes them There's a bus stop on Jack Cooper Drive by Hillier. There's also another one around by the Evanston Garden Library, I think. So they can get through to the garden from either of those.
Okay. And yeah, Williston's another one that I've noticed as someone who takes public transport places trying to get to the Williston Football Club, for example, or even it's quicker to walk. You go to the Gawler Central Coles and then you walk from there to the football club for half an hour is the fastest way to get there via public transport.
Yeah, it takes longer on the bus, trust me.
Yeah, and so...
But having said that, I have a lot of older people in Williston who do use the bus. They know how to use it. They know it is limited. It's unsatisfactory, but there's a number of older people in their 80s that need that bus and they use it. There's not many of them, but yeah, it's been changed constantly and that's the problem. Yeah.
Free bus as well. So you can ring up for that and it'll pick you up. I've got friends that use that. They just ring for it, picks them up at their door, takes them where they want to. They tell them what time they want to be picked up. It's there for them. It's like a free taxi service. It's amazing. I've not used it, but I've got lots of friends that do use it.
Councillor Sam.
Thank you, Chair Cody. My question, without notice, is that, as you all know, Tony Piccolo has become our politician for this area. And I've always said that whoever the local politician is into the government that's in power, we should be in a good relationship with them. I was going to say in bed with them, but I can't say that. But basically, we should definitely ask for the local member for Light to come along to a meeting at some time. And maybe it'd be a question time that could be organised by the mayor and that sort of thing, just to be able to get, you know, a relationship there that when there is something to do with helping with staff with grants and things like that, that we can work together. Because in previous times, we've seen where Tony has got a grant, but it wasn't discussed with our wonderful staff that get our grants and things like that. And Councillor Diane and I attended a huge feature in our town. To a lot of people, oh, well, it's only a bridge across the railway line and so forth. But it was quite embarrassing because, number one, we weren't even recognised and he knew we were there. And number two, there was no real recognition about the town of Gawler. It was about the government and the bridge. I think we've got to change that. We've got to work better together and talk better together and have a good relationship for the next 4 years.
Right. So do staff have any response, I guess, just in terms of the general topic of having regular communication with our local member of parliament? Do we have any process at the moment? Is there any sort of, you know, monthly meeting or anything?
We seek meetings with Tony regularly. Yeah. We've written letters to him in regard to the grants that he's been able to achieve for the community, and we're hoping to work with him to deliver on that. I've had regular conversations with him. Most of them are informal at public events. Yeah.
Yep.
Before, when we had Tony in as the Labor and then we had the Liberal in, it was sort of different. Now that he's with the party that's actually in power,
Right.
it sort of will probably make a difference, I think, along the line for Gawler, hopefully anyway.
I think there's also an opportunity to work with whoever becomes the member for Spence, and to that end, I met with the candidate for Spence, Matt Burnell, and Senator Marielle Smith, and I invited the chair of the Gawler Youth Advisory Committee, Jade Hancock, who was really excited to meet Marielle Smith. So we'll be continuing those relationships as well, depending on who sits in that seat. I think that's a really, really good opportunity. So it's both state and federal. And that's why we go to Canberra every year, to continue those relationships and develop those relationships. And certainly Mariel Smith said, if you do go to Canberra, make sure you have a meeting with me, and would like to continue that. They were particularly excited meeting Jade, because, you know, as you know, we have very articulate young people in Gawler, and I think I think that's a really good way forward, is to not just meet with Mayor and CEO, but have our young leaders there as well. So yeah, I think working with Tony and ensuring that we get the best out of the Labor state government is important. Yeah, so and there's lots of challenges. Being a safe seat, certainly it seems to be a disadvantage being in a safe seat now, which I think that needs to change. You know, it shouldn't just be all about the seat of Boothby. You know, Gawler Health Service needs a lot of money thrown at it, and yeah,
well, it's not just about Boothby, it's about Sturt too.
That's just so nice, yeah. And you know, growth councils need support. So we will certainly be discussing those matters when we meet with Tony, which is a fairly regular occurrence. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll, after the election in 2 weeks now, we'll know who our local member is federally and continue to work well with them. So do we have any other questions without notice? And do we have any motions without notice? If not, I'll close the meeting at 9:39, and I'll close it with the gavel. There you go. See you, everybody.
Good night, all.